Welcome to the Open Mic Comedy Podcast. I'm your host, Mark. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. This podcast is here for everybody on the open mic comedy circuit, whether you're a comedian, an MC, a promoter, or even a tutor. Even comedy fans who enjoy spending their time in pub basements watching the stars of the future. Today's guest is somebody whose comedy sparkles on stage as much as her outfits. After seeing her act, you'll never look at an envelope in the same way again. She's one half of Catsuit Comedy. So please welcome to the stage, it's Sophie Sconcia. Woo!
Hello. I feel like I'm at a job interview. I guess my main flaw is that I'm a bit of a perfectionist, Mark.
Good at timekeeping.
Yeah, so I don't suffer fools gladly, but I do believe in good communication.
Yeah, work as part of a team and on your own effectively.
Absolutely.
If only that was the interview for comedy.
Well, I'd smash it every time, Mark. I don't know about you.
I feel like every time we go on stage is like a new interview.
Yeah, it is a bit. It's like, I always think that it's like, I feel like all my life kind of, you know, what everybody feels like to some extent, that you want everybody to like you.
Yeah.
And then getting on stage and making a fool of yourself is the opposite to that. It's like saying, I don't care what people think.
Yeah.
But it's also the ultimate, I want everybody to like me. So there we are. Yeah. I guess an interview is the same. It is like an interview with a whole group of people crossing their arms and saying, come on then.
So the first question I always ask anybody that comes on here is, why have you come on here? No, it's how did it all start and why? Yeah,
so I always wanted to do stand-up. Actually probably my earliest memory is making my dad laugh. And the complete buzz that came from that. We used to have, so he was recording me. He was trying to get me to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. You know, it was tiny. I must have been 3 or something.
Yeah.
And he had, you know, in the old days, you know, you and me, Mark, we remember the old days. It had like a cassette player and it had a little mic with it. Hard to believe now. But I'd seen Jeremy Beadle on telly. You know, they used to prank people.
Yes,
Beadle's about.
God.
He used to prank people and he'd get them right and they would swear and they had to beep it out. So they'd go, you know, I can't believe it, you beep.
Yeah.
Like, so I was obviously way too small to kind of understand about swearing, but I knew it was hilarious. So he got me to sing this Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star and I sang Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Beep. I did the beeps myself. And that was, and of course, there's a lot of cackling on this tape is infamous, you know, obviously in the family, and all you can hear is me cackling away, like absolutely wetting myself. And I think I was hooked. And of course, it gets funnier and funnier for me, and more frustrating for my dad as the tape goes on, because he's like, ha, 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 at first.
Yeah.
And then he says, no, now do it properly now. Because they were sending it to my grandparents, my Irish grandparents. And so it was... And I think it was kind of a big deal, you know, like I can't imagine recording yourself now as a big deal, but it was. And I just pushed it. I just did it again and again and again. Like I would not let it go. And it kind of, it peaked, you know, it was funny at first and then it kind of dipped a bit, you know, and then as my dad got more frustrated, it got funnier and funnier and funnier. And you know, that was it for me. And then I did a talent contest at Butlins when I was about 9.
Wow.
And I did stand up and came second, but those dancers were amazing. You know, they were like, were they a mum and daughter couple? It was something like, anyway, they're very good.
Yeah.
I did the splits, I didn't, but I did stand up and I came second. I had this whole room of people at Butlins, you know, sitting with their, like, you know, kind of blokes sitting with their pints, and I was like, anyway, so that was it. I thought, I wanted to do it. And then, but for years, I just didn't know how you could do it. I just couldn't imagine how you could become a stand-up comedian. And I had an idea at school that you went to Cambridge. That's how you did it. And you joined the Footlights.
Yeah.
It's hilarious to me now. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And then it didn't really work out that way. I became a teenager and discovered that, you know, I wanted to drink alcohol and go out with a lot of boys and concerts and not really studying very hard. I didn't go to school very much, unfortunately. And I thought maybe not. I still did okay. I mean, I went to uni and everything, but I just, life got in the way and I still didn't know how you did it.
Yeah.
And then other life happened, I had kids and a job and I just felt really, really far away from doing stand-up. And even though, I loved comedy. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with do you remember Just for Laughs, the Montreal Comedy Festival? It was on late at night.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have been watching it, and I definitely was. And, they had like Emo Phillips on and just incredible people, like Bill Hicks.
Yeah.
I definitely shouldn't have been watching Bill Hicks.
No, probably not.
And I was but that stayed with me, and I was always obsessed with comedy. And I just thought, how am I going to do it? And then one of my friends, my good friend Kath, who you may have heard of, she's the other half of Cat Soup, said, I'm going to do this stand-up comedy course in Tring with Logan Murray.
Okay.
And I just thought, what? That's mental. And then I was like, oh, I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous. I've wasted my life. And I wasted too much time. So I signed up as well. I got kind of like the last space or something. And I got there and I just thought, what am I doing? And Des Feely was also on that course. He was also a member of the Hearts comedy workshop. And so Logan Murray is just amazing. But I'd never done any kind of like speaking into a microphone. Not really. I'd done a lot of kind of acting growing up. I was also crazy about drama and improv. I did a lot of improv, but I'd never really spoken with a microphone because when you're on stage, you just project. And I was just something about having the microphone made me really nervous. And I remember at one point just being like, oh,
yeah,
what am I doing? And Logan Murray just saying to me, I'm listening. I want to hear what you're going to say. I want to hear you say it. And I was like, right. And that was just the moment I thought, I can do this. And at the end of the course, we did like a roving comedy night where we did 4 gigs in one night. So my first gig was 4 gigs.
When was this?
Not last year, but the year before, around May. Was it? God, I can't remember. June. So 2 years ago, basically.
So June 23.
Yeah.
Because I think I looked at that.
Did you think about doing it?
I looked at that. I'm sure I looked at something where it said you do a course and then you do 4 gigs in. You move around.
Yeah. So the audience buy tickets for a pub.
Yeah.
And then there's like 4 groups of you, and there's 4 of you in each group. And the audience stay there and you move around so that the audience get to see like all of the groups. They stay put and you move from pub to pub. And you have a pro with you. So you do your little bits and then the pro goes on last. So the audience get to see 4 pros and the MC is a pro. The MC stays there. Yeah. And so my 4, and it was a bit of a baptism of fire, but it was brilliant because all 4 gigs were different. And I think straight away you think, yeah, there's so many factors to whether people laugh. People laugh at different points. Did I do that bit differently? And it's like, it's a great education in like how different all different gigs are. And we had Tom Stade was the pro.
Oh, bloody hell.
Yeah. He was the pro, and and at the end, he was great. And at the end, he said to me, talk to me about comedy, Sophie. And I was like, oh, I really love it. And he could just tell that I was just addicted. And he said, Sophie's going to lose her house.
I love Tom Stade. He's so good.
I'm going to lose my house, Mark.
Please don't lose it. It's not worth that much.
Yeah. He also said to me, the trouble with you, Sophie, is that you've had a real job for too long. And I was like, yeah, that is actually really good advice. It's at some point, if you're going to make a go of it, if you're successful enough, you're going to have to make a decision where you like, I'm gonna love this and I'm gonna do it, and I'm probably gonna fail and not have any money, or I'm going to be massively successful. Who knows? Or am I too old and this is all a waste of time? Or am I deluded?
I mean, I think everybody of our age must have those feelings every so often.
Yeah.
Or quite a lot. I know I do. It's like, it's with that whole thing is that how much time can you dedicate to it to be as good as you want to be, not as good as you can be within the parameters you've got. And I find sometimes it's like, I need to be doing 3-4 gigs a week to start getting momentum. And it's so hard to do, and especially if you've got a job that you've been doing for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's why I when I speak to people on this and they're really young and you're just like, you've just come out of university, you haven't really got a job.
No.
You know, you just do bar shift work or whatever, but you can go out and do whatever you want. I admire that so much now.
Yeah, there's a massive freedom to that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas I'm the opposite. I'm giving that freedom to my kids by letting them live in my house. And I'm like, this is them. I mean, I want to do it for them, but at the same time, I'm like massively jealous that they get that freedom to explore their creativity, you know, and I'm paying the bills. I'm like their sugar mummy, literally. Like, not in a weird way. Mark, don't make it weird.
that can be an edit.
Okay.
So you did 4 gigs then in a day, in effect.
Yeah.
So how long was the course? Was it just one session, or was it a number of
No,
sessions?
it was like a weekly session for like 6 weeks. I don't know whether it's as long as this course that he does in London, but Logan Murray is brilliant. I did 2 courses. I did one with him and I did one with Dec Monroe, and they're very different, but equally like amazing, really. So Logan's course, he is trying very hard to help you find the funny.
Yeah.
You know, these funny moments kind of come and go, and you've got to write them down, you've got to record them, otherwise they're just, you know, lost to the ether. And that moment will never happen again. And he kind of really believes in that, and he tries to help you to find that in you. There's kind of a lot of improv, which I love anyway. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with improv. But really finding that moment of funniness is what's important in that course. And there's a lot of freedom from that, but also a lot of risk, because, you know, you might get out there and go, I think I found this amazingly funny bit, and everybody else just goes, what? There's less kind of structure there. Although you do kind of think about what are funny words and what, you know, how you can put an afterthought in that makes it funnier. So there is an element of that too, but you've got to find the funny first. Dec's course is one of the founding members of Angel Comedy, and his course is much more like looking to see what other comedians are doing and why they're doing that. You know, taking like kind of being able to teaching you how to kind of like be aware of what's happening in a room.
Yeah.
You know, like, what is that comedian trying to do? What are they doing? How is that succeeding? Why isn't it working? Why is it working? And also the idea of like taking like a pub story. You know, it doesn't, you know, taking what you want to say, it doesn't have to be funny. And, you know, how do you make that funny?
Yeah.
You know, and how do other people make their stories funny? You know, what is successful? It's quite a different approach.
Okay.
But I mean, massive overlaps. It's just like a different way of getting to the same point. And I found it really valuable to actually do both.
Yeah, we learned on our course things like how the sound of words makes a difference, and ending a sentence on a word that has a strong K or something at the end rather than like a softer letter has that kind of different impact on what you're saying. It comes out meaning exactly the same, but that swapping around and making some affirmation at the end just kind of brings it up a bit. For some reason, there's something in the human brain that you don't understand as a punter, and I don't think you learn until you're like a little way into comedy and you start thinking, oh, hold on, those things make a difference, and you don't get it. It's like the rule of 3. If somebody says 2 things to you, your brain's automatically going, what's next?
Yeah.
And if there is no next, you're like, you've lost all the impact. You're
waiting for it. And I guess in a way you've got to know those rules to break them if you want to do something different.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and that is real. Just, you know, I've read a lot of books about comedy, Mark. Like a ridiculous amount of books about comedy. I read massive autobiographies, but I also read, like, you know, these books that tell you how to do comedy.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think you can get too much in your own head about it, because you lose the spontaneity of being in the room if you're too careful.
Yeah.
With what you say. And that's like, I think that's a real balance, and that's kind of also why I like to kind of do improv, to kind of keep myself spontaneous. And I think it kind of, you know, emceeing is interesting in that regard, because then that's the ultimate being in the room.
Yeah.
But you're also trying to get a bit of material in at the same time, and I think that's a whole different kind of kettle of fish. To me, that's much more advanced. And then sometimes also you see people who just, you think they're just a natural comedian. A lot of times they are people who just make it look really natural, but sometimes they're really not. They're just people who just get it.
Yeah.
Who just have a rapport with the audience and get up there and just are amazing. Yeah, it's complicated. I think I know I read too many books about it because I think I get too much, I think about it too much. I'm still amazed by how varied it can be. Like how you can do, you can do 10 gigs in a row and everybody will love you and you'll be like, oh my God, this is the best thing in the world. And then get to another gig and have complete silence. Everybody laughs at that. That is if nobody laughs at anything else, they at least laugh at this one. And you get that silence. And you just go, whoa, what? It's never, it's amazing. And I think some of that you have to self-reflect about, right? Because you have to think, right, I didn't have much energy tonight because I'm really terrible for sometimes doing 3 gigs or 4 gigs in a week. And then sometimes I think to myself, when I get to my 4th gig, I'm really tired. And then that coming across, and that's why I guess you need to video yourself to look back and go, yeah, I look like I didn't believe that was funny.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's just, the room.
Yeah, sometimes
the person went on before you, whether it's cold or too hot or,
it can also be what your attitude is when you turn up. Sometimes you go into a gig and go, I don't think this is going to be very good tonight. And because you've already put yourself in that negative aspect, once you get on stage, it's like, well, it's not really going to go very well, is it? Because you don't believe it yourself.
You don't believe it. I don't know whether I do that exactly. I do.
I know I've done it before.
I do sometimes sit in an audience and think, oh, I've heard these jokes so many times before. Like especially on the open mic scene, you might have like a whole succession of a certain type of white male comedian and they just are doing the same jokes as everybody else who is a white male comedian. And they're just not very original and they are offensive. And I've got a bit of a wicked sense of humour, but I would say that, if that's happening and then I have to get up after them, I always have this like, should I kind of call them out about the stuff that they've said? And will that ruin my set if I come on all like, well, the most surprising bit about that, mate, is that any girl would want to sit with you in the first place. Come on, is that really me? And then afterwards, I think, I should have said that because it was a rubbish gig anyway and they hated me. But, what can you do? It doesn't happen that often, to be fair.
No, but I've seen it happen where something has not been great and then a female comedian's got up and made an immediate comment about what's happened. And it's usually, every time I've seen it happen, it's gone in their favour. Because it's kind of like they've seen that person try and tell a joke and struggle through a joke and try and get something across and nobody's buying it and nobody's interested. And nobody wants to hear about the topic they're talking about.
Yeah.
And then for the female comedians to then come on and make a quip about it or whatever and then just go, they've won the crowd over immediately.
Yeah. I think it is I think it's worth the risk, actually, because if they're not going to like you anyway, who cares? You might as well try. If they still don't like it, then, oh well. It's like, at the same time, it's like not up to you to put the world to rights, No. If the audience enjoyed them and they were laughing, that's the worst bit. Really, if the audience is silent, then you'll go, oh, well, they didn't like them anyway. Like me, they didn't like them. But when I say them, I mean the jokes, but you know what I mean? I think a lot of it, you can get away with a lot of stuff if people like you. And then I think there has to kind of be a bit of a combination of the both, really. If they like you and you're saying something that's a bit on the edge, then they're going to really love you. If they don't like you and you say something that's a bit on the edge, then, they're really not going to like you.
No.
That sounds really like personal, but it's not personal. It is the material, it is a performance. But I just think, if you can, it's worth the risk. It's just that I'm always like, oh, I don't know if I want to have this battle today.
Yes. So how many gigs have you done now then?
I lost count, but I know I lost count at about 150. And that was a few months ago.
Okay. So you've done quite a lot in 2 years.
Yeah, I do gig every week and sometimes more than once a week. And usually it's all right. I have to say, I don't usually feel destroyed afterwards, like, oh my God, I'm never doing comedy again, but I do sometimes.
Yeah. That brings us on to the next topic, of best and worst moments on a stage.
Yeah, the best moment I ever had on stage that to this day cracks me up is I was emceeing and I was doing a bit of material about like my age, and I was just saying that like there's a lot of talk about ketamine these days. There's a lot of talk about ket.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, it just wasn't the thing, right? I mean, that's not exactly true. There definitely was ketamine when I was younger, but it wasn't, that's discussed. I think it wasn't as prevalent maybe. And so I was kind of saying, making a joke about how, it wasn't like that in our day. We just drank pints of water because we're all on ecstasy. and I was saying, but I was working into that, working my way up to that, because I was also emceeing, so I was kind of like doing a bit of crowd work. And I said, everybody here, like there's nobody here under 25, is there? There's no one here under 25. I can't, is there anyone? And then a voice from the back was like, yeah. So I was like, oh my God, you're under 25. Do you do ket? And they said, no, Mum. Because it was my kid who'd come to see me, and I just couldn't see them at the back. So that was hilarious. And the audience, of course, found that hilarious.
Yeah.
I could have set that up to be a joke.
Yeah.
I hadn't. It was a genuine moment. That was just amazing. And, you don't usually laugh at your own jokes on stage, but I was dying. No, Mum.
Timing.
Honest Mum. So yeah, that was brilliant. And that's the kind of spontaneous kind of humour I think that is great. But then actually I do have another one, most recently at Catsup. So Kath and I do, so I do stand up on my own, but Kath and I also, we are Catsup. We run Catsup Comedy, but we also have an act together, a double act. And that is so much fun because you move slightly into sketch when you do that, because the audience are more or less looking at how you're interacting with each other, and they're less kind of like concerned with how you're interacting with them. And the more we do it, Mark, the crazier it gets.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I saw the picture from the other week.
George Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I missed him because, what happened was Kath was on.
Yeah.
And I had to, there was an instant earlier with me giving birth to an Easter egg, Mark, and it left me a little bit, feeling a little bit under the weather. So I stepped out for a minute, and Kath was left on stage, encouraging everybody to sing along to Faith, because it was Easter. Faith. That's how you pronounce Faith. And miraculously, because it was Easter, George
Rose.
He came to see Catsup. Can you believe it? He wasn't there for very long, but he was amazing. He Kath was amazed to see him walk on from the back like that. But yeah, I missed the whole thing, unfortunately.
Somebody did actually message me about that night and said it was one of the best nights they've ever seen.
Really? Yeah. It is. We love it. It is a lot of mucking about. I hope I haven't given away too many of our secrets. It's different every time. So you won't see that again. You might see it again, but it won't be like that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I'd love to see George. So maybe he will come back. Who knows? But it is a tremendous amount of fun. And that's something that stand-up is a very solitary, quite a lonely kind of place to be, especially when you have felt like it hasn't gone very well, which is, sometimes they're just listening to you and they're not laughing, and which isn't bad, they're engaged, but sometimes it feels like, oh no. Or you might get a heckler. Probably the worst heckler, I think, is the one that finishes your jokes for you, because if they get it right, they've ruined your joke, even though not everybody can hear you, but them, because you've got the mic. They'll either ruin the joke, or they've done a better joke, or they've done a worse joke, but it's ruined kind of the timing.
Yeah.
And it's hard to ignore somebody who's right there saying the joke at you. There's all sorts of things you think, and afterwards you think, oh, I'll drop that one because it's too obvious if you can guess the answer. And then you think, oh no, I'll just change the timing so they haven't got time to say the answer. But the reality is that the reason you're doing that joke is because it usually smashes. And the timing's important. You want people to go, what's she going to say? And then reveal. So, that's kind of it's not exactly a pet hate, because it doesn't really derail anything. It just makes you think, oh, it would have been better without you saying that.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of talk to them. And actually, the ones that say do that are the ones that actually are really engaged and they want to join in. They feel like they're really close to you. They feel like they like you so much that you're their mate, and they can just answer. They can just say, "Oh, I've got you."
Yeah.
Which is actually lovely. They're probably my target audience, and they're like, "Oh, bless you." Oh.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the worst moment, but. Yeah, but the best moment actually probably is on stage with Kath, to be honest with you, because it's hilarious.
Yeah.
The only problem with that is that then we have to have somebody come on and follow something that we've done that's crazy, and we have to say to them, prepare yourself. We had Chris Alley came on after we did the Easter egg. He was brilliant because we warned him and he was ready to come on and make a joke about something we'd just done.
Yeah. Yeah, he was the one that messaged me and said it was amazing.
Was it him?
Yeah.
He was great. Yeah, it is a lot of fun. And I do also think that improv, I do a lot of improv as well. I have a love-hate relationship with improv because improv can be so pretentious. And I'm allergic to pretentious people or any kind of hypocrisy. I think a lot of my set is being brought up by a very religious mother, and anything that doesn't feel kind of like genuine or real to me or a little bit too nice.
Yeah.
Too nice. You're too nice. I hate you. No, it's not true. But I'm like, oh, and I feel like improv is on the edge there between people being a little bit too earnest, and also if it's done badly. I mean, the best improv is when you give the person that you're on stage with, you are trying to make them look good, and they're trying to make you look good. And then the comedy or sometimes the poignancy of what you're saying, sometimes you can get into something really deep, comes from that genuine kind of, interaction between you, and the audience really feels that. And if you have somebody showing off and hogging, which you can in improv, because in improv you have to agree with whatever the other person says. So if somebody is like, I'm going to do this, I'm not listening to you, and I'm going to agree with everything, and you have to agree with me, because otherwise it's not improv. It can go so cringe and be bad. But when Kath and I do a lot of improv together to get to what we're going to do, it looks like mucking around, but it's planned.
Yeah.
And we do a bit of improv. We do a lot of spider charts and diagrams where we link, we say, right, we're going to do a quiz about the 80s.
Yeah.
So what about the 80s? And we just say everything about the 80s, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
This recording music off the radio, dancing to Top of the Pops, Dealey Boppers, everything that we can remember about the 80s. George Michael, Wham, we just whack it all in.
Yeah.
And then we'll say, oh, George Michael, and then we'll both go, oh, because we miss him, R.I.P. George. And then we write that in.
Yeah.
Because we have a genuine love for George, and so, that's why he appears. That's where we go with. I mean, I guess that's what we do. In how I write with anyway is a lot to do with. Sometimes I take a random word and I try and free write around it.
Yeah.
But I do a lot of spider diagrams where I make connections. I think if you've got a pub story or any kind of story, when I say pub story, do you know what I mean? Like a story that you just tell somebody else.
Yeah. Not
necessarily in a pub. Could be at Alcoholics Anonymous. Who knows where you are when you tell these stories? Doctor's surgery. Counsellor, therapist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what's funny about therapists is that they are a bit of a captive audience, but they're not actually allowed to laugh. So if you can make a therapist laugh, it's beautiful. They're not allowed. And something wrong with you if you're trying to do that, by the way, in therapy.
Yeah,
that's probably why you're there.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Because you take a pub story and it's just not funny. And I see a lot of people do this. When we see people send videos in for cat soup, there's nothing wrong with an entertaining story. You don't have to. I don't believe in laughing every minute or whatever you're supposed to do. I think that only really works for competitions, really, to be honest with you. I think the real audience don't necessarily need that. But I do think, where are the jokes? You've got to put them in. And sometimes if you've got a story and then you take elements of the story and you try and connect them with something else, like what that is like. My kids have flown the nest, they're like birds. What else about birds? That kind of thing. Oh yeah, they fly south for the winter, or mine go on holiday. And that is all this kind of connections all the time. That's what you do. So finding these connections, I do do a bit of sketch writing as well, and I do the same with that. If I'm trying to think, if there's a theme to the sketch, I think, spider diagrams, what's the worst thing that could happen here? What's the best thing that could happen here? How do you feel about that? How, it's all like delving into, how do you feel about that? As in, like, is how you feel about that a controversial opinion? Is everybody going to agree with you, or are they going to think it's funny that they don't agree with you? Or is there going to be a slight thing that they agree with, and then you're going to take it too far and they're going to be like, what's going on? And that's the humour. So I think there's loads of things that you just must be constantly pulling out now. I mean, they're enemies, improv and stand-up. I didn't realise this when I started.
I've never quite understood that from coming into this game so late. When you get stand-up comedians going, I hate improv. And it's like, but in my head, it's like, well, but you like the comedians that do the crowd work, and you want to kind of partially be that sort of comedian that does crowd work. And that's surely improv. You're improvising on the spot. So I can't understand the thing where these two groups of people that are in essence with the same aim of trying to make an audience laugh differ. I don't get it.
I know that it works both ways as well. So you can't believe this, because people who do improv are so nice, Mark. They're like lovely people, and they really love the, being on stage together, and they're just and they're just so positive, and they, want to support each other. And I feel like, amongst them, I feel like this kind of like cynical old cow. Like, all right, I'm a stage hogger, really. Because, and I'm like, but honestly, I don't think I am naturally. It's just because they're so nice. They're such a, after you do improv, because there's so much trust involved. After you do improv, they'll stand around and like say what they thought was really great. I really liked it when this happened. I'm just throwing this positivity into the middle of the circle. I mean, that is going to make most stand-ups like sick in their mouths, isn't it? Because we're just like, oh no, oh what? What are you doing? We just can't. It's just like, and they really, if you mention that sometimes the improvisers will say it's not stand-up. When you welcome the audience, don't take the mick out of the audience. It's not stand-up. It's because they feel like, and stand-up is selfish. They'll say it's not, when you're trying to be funny in improv, you mustn't be selfish, like, it's not stand-up. They will say that all the time, as if it's like the opposite. To me, it's the same thing. You don't have to be happy, joy to do improv.
No.
You don't, I like my fellow improvisers. I yes-and them. I think they're great. I don't feel like you need to be you support each other, but you don't need to be like relentlessly positive and anti stand-up. Like I one of my very first gigs, I think probably about my 7th gig, really early on, I didn't feel that it'd gone that well, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why, but I was trying to do something a bit different. I think I was still, have some people like do the same 5 over and over again. I was trying hard to kind of like, to kind of like change it a little bit, so you're still kind of finding my feet, because I think in a way you've got to find your 5 and then do it over and over again. Adam Bloom was there when I did my set, and he's great, and I've met him a few times. He always remembers me. He's adorable, really nice guy, and his book's great. And I'd read his book, so I chatted to him about his book, and then I went up and I did my my 5 minutes, and I was like, oh God. And I came back and I sat down and I said to him, I just don't think it went that well. And he said, well, at least you're not deluded. Which is so harsh. But
it's a hell of a compliment in a weird kind of way.
Yeah, because I knew that he didn't mean it like that. What he meant was, and he said, it's better than thinking you always do well. And he said, and then he gave me some amazing advice, which was free, from somebody who has a huge amount of experience and has just written a book. And he said, people at the back couldn't hear you. So you thought they weren't laughing, but couldn't hear you. And he said, baby, which is a nice thing to say, because it meant, don't worry. And then he said, and that's not your fault, right? And then he said, you were first on and the MC didn't do any MCing, which as a new comedian, I had no idea how important the MC was. And you learn very quickly it's incredibly important. So he said, what happened was you walked onto a completely cold crowd and you did your material. Whereas if that happens, you have to bin your material and do a bit of crowd work.
Yeah.
Because you have to be your own MC. And for that amount of advice on my 7th gig was just gold.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was great of him to say that, and really nice. I felt like it was respectful to say that to me in a way, even though it sounds really bloody harsh. Because he just didn't treat me, he just didn't patronise me.
Yeah.
He was like, and he actually said, well, and he also said, oh, that's only your 7th gig. That was great, you know.
Yeah.
So very nice. So don't be deluded. Yeah, and I think, I mean, I'm kind of aware that I'm talking as if I'm some kind of expert. I'm just kind of telling you what kind of my experience has been and what I've found useful and what I've learnt from other people. It's not really my own discovery. It's just from kind of paying attention and being a little bit obsessed about things and, hyper focusing on unhealthily. And which is another beautiful thing about comedians, isn't it? If you've ever had any trouble in your life where you thought I might be ADHD, or, you know, school was a bit of a nightmare for me because I'm, you know, not very good at focusing, and, you know, or any kind of issue that you've had growing up, or perhaps you've always felt different. You know, everybody thinks they're different, but, you know, comedians know they are. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? You always feel like, oh, and then when you get into this community of open mic people and non-open mic people, pros as well, you kind of think, oh, we're all, oh, yeah. We're all the same. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, like, it's like people come on and say, oh, yeah, I'm a comedian and I've got ADHD. It's like saying, oh, I'm a comedian and I breathe. Yeah. You know, everybody has, you know, and autism as well is quite prevalent, isn't it, amongst comedians. And there's a certain amount of, I mean, you know, I won't go into it, but there's a certain amount of overlap in certain traits there. Certainly within my own family. I talk about my own family's experience. Like 2 of my children have got ADHD, and you know, genetic. One is my first husband's son, and the other one is my second husband's daughter. So all indications point to me. Yeah. But when you meet other people who are comedians, it's such a great feeling to feel like, oh, I'm not so different. All these people are like, they're getting it. They're doing this crazy thing, like. Yeah. You know, like jumping. People say, oh, I don't know how you do it. And you're like, well, I don't know how people jump out of planes, but they do it for fun, and so do we. Yeah. And, you know, it's a nice community. I mean, when people say it's lonely, it's kind of lonely, but also not, right? Because you meet the same people all the time. Yeah. You all have the same struggles, the agony of failure and, you know, people pleasing and also not giving a shit at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that aspect of you see the same people over and over and over again. Yeah. The amount of times you do a gig, 2 or 3 gigs in a week, and you're just like, I've seen you twice this week, and I know I'm seeing you once at least next week.
Yeah, you don't have to make plans to meet people, do you? There's a couple of people that I ran into so much that it's almost like, were we lovers in a past life? I mean, you know, Stacey, who you've had on, I bump into her so often. I've bumped into her in the street before. And in London, like what, you know, what the universe wants us to be friends. No need to make any plans because I'll see you on the circuit.
There was a period, I think, every time I did phono in Hitchin, Claire Cox was on. Every time I did Comedy Incorporated,
Claire Cox is another one.
Is on.
Claire Cox is another one for me.
What? And I know we've got the same surname, but it's like, this is getting ridiculous.
Twice I've turned up at courses and I've been like, oh, hello, Claire. Look, it looks like we're doing the same course. Yeah. What are the chances?
I know, it's mad.
I can't remember what the original question was now.
No, neither can I really. This bit will be edited out, don't worry about that.
In my day, they had cassette tapes with a microphone. And we didn't have mobile phones, Mark, did we? God. What did you do, Mum, when you went to meet up with somebody and something happened and they were delayed or they couldn't make it? Well, you waited and you cursed them and you said, I'm never speaking to that bastard ever again. And you left and you didn't get married and that was the end. Anyway, good times, not good times.
Different times.
People love the 90s. The 90s, I'm slightly traumatised by the 90s. Like all this kind of like ladette culture that I was just so into. I really wanted, it was like, for the first time, I felt like we were being allowed in kind of more male spaces. You know, instead of being like, right, the girls stand over there and the boys stand over there. It was like, we can all drink pints. It'll all be all right, you know. But the kind of the payoff for that was that you had to be so laddie and you had to like put up with anything. Like you couldn't object to anything that was said at any time. Otherwise you were like, oh, we knew you weren't supposed to be here. Get back in with your doilies. Yeah. You know, like it was like that. So you had to be absolutely like, you know, you had to be like, yeah, I love Loaded. It's a great magazine. You know, like you just had to,
yeah,
you know, and it was, and you look back now, you think, it was a bit of a nightmare, really. But of course, you know, yeah, it was fun. I mean, it's funner than not drinking pints and, you know, vomiting behind the bins and,
yeah,
you know, that kind of stuff. But it was not without its problems. So because my children are grown up and they have a different worldview to me, but I'm also reasonably young in comparison to like a lot of my peers who have children that are that age. And also I'm a kind of person that I never understood why people get so set in their ways. I always want to know about new stuff. When people say, oh, well, why do they use all these new words? I hate these new words. And I love new words. I love language anyway. I speak several languages. I lived in Brazil for a while and I did Spanish and Portuguese at uni. And I've always loved kind of traveling in new cultures and stuff. So I'm really into language and words. I did a set in Spanish at Comedy Por Favor in at Angel once, and I'd like to do it again actually, but it's really nerve-wracking. Very interesting because they laughed in different spots and the rhythm was different. And anyway, fascinating. I love languages, and because I love, you know, new words. When new words come out, I'm like, you know. When I say come out, I mean, they just become you. They just naturally evolve. Yeah. And I'm always like, great, what's that word mean? And it's fascinating to me. And some of them are a bit silly, right? The kids. I think people get confused because sometimes young kids pick up on a word that means nothing. And then that's kind of irritating because the whole point is that it means nothing and you're not supposed to understand it. Yeah. Yeah. But there are other words that are incredibly useful, that are just so brilliant. You're like, you know, what did we call a wedgie before we had the word wedgie? Oh, it's really annoying when I've got my pants a bit tight up. You know, it's so much more efficient to say wedgie. Yeah. That's a really stupid example, but I'm trying to go with a stupid example because I don't want to go with something heavy like non-binary. Yeah. But although non-binary is a joke in my not non-binary is a joke, but I do talk about one of my kids is non-binary and I do talk about that in my set. But I find it fascinating that you can take something that people and I don't think it's the other way around where people hear a word and they go, yeah. I think it's something that speaks to what's already there. Otherwise, they just wouldn't take off. They wouldn't be popular. Words just kind of organically appear. Yeah, like they're created and they take off. If you make it your own, if you've ever tried to give yourself a nickname, Mark, you'll know that you cannot force people.
I've never done
to get on board.
I've tried to get rid of nicknames.
Well, exactly. You can't control that. So I think it all comes. So I love these new words, and I don't understand why people get really set in their ways. And I think, but there's another element of that as well, because I was brought up so religious, and I was brought up in a kind of this evangelical Christianity where people are very nice, and I genuinely am not slagging off Christians or religious people. I really am not. But there's an element of that is absurd, and that there's an element of people believing dogma, you know, and repeated words that become true, which as you know, tell a lie enough and people believe it's true is an incredibly dangerous, horrific note from history, right? So I'm like, I just hate, I love words, but I also kind of like rail against this kind of dogma, repeated dogma. And I just think there's a wonderful fascination between those two extremes that I really, really love. And people just get so set in their ways, and I always want to know. And when I was brought up in this way, people were very nice about belief and religion. They're very nice people. There was like an underlying, but not that.
Right.
So, and when I was growing up, particularly my mum was a particular example. So I'm talking about my mother more than specifically rather than a group of people.
Yeah.
So she was, pretty racist, pretty homophobic. She didn't think she was. She, to this day, doesn't think she is. But the stuff that she says is horrific.
Yeah.
And she just doesn't think she is. But she's from another time. She's older.
Yeah.
But also, come on. So growing up, so I'm bisexual, and growing up, I could never have admitted that I was, and I was terrified actually about anybody finding out when I was growing up, and that was partly 'cause school. You couldn't come out of school in those days. My children don't have the same. Not to say that they're not without discrimination, but my children have that experience growing up. My eldest is bisexual. That wasn't that big a deal at school. Slightly, there were times of, but not like it would have been in my school.
Oh,
it should have been forget it. As they've just got such big different experiences to us, and I'm like, where do I sit here? So some of my comedy kind of is in this kind of like words, new words, and was it an identity? And then I'm like forcing far too much of this into the audience. Like, I just want them to laugh, and I don't want them to think I'm teaching them a lesson.
Yeah, I think I did want to touch on that, because when you mentioned about the non-binary, the audiences that we play to are more of a centre left, so their minds are probably more open to that kind of world. Whereas if you go to certain places where it's a bit more leaning right, they're maybe a bit more closed off to that side of the world.
Yeah.
And have you ever played in audiences that feel a bit more right, when you've kind of gone into that and you felt something in the room just kind of go off or something? Because I used to have this thing when I used to start, I sometimes do when I start about being Jewish. You mention the word Jew, and it gets associated with Israel, Palestine, all of that, and immediately a lot of the audiences start to think, oh, here we go. We've got a preach coming on here.
But where are we going with this?
And that's why I try to literally go as crass as I can to bring that down. That's not the point. The point is you'll understand at the end. But something like that's this close to home, do you ever feel weird about talking about stuff like this?
Yeah, that's something that I think about a lot. So I think anyway, not all audiences are for everyone. There's quite a big, can you do your set to any audience? It's kind of the requirement, isn't it? You say, oh, you should be like, when I book you, you're going to come and everybody's going to love you, and if I pay you any money, which sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't. If I pay any money, are my audience going to get their money's worth? Can I put you anywhere and you'll be able to make them laugh?
Yeah.
First of all, I genuinely am not being preachy.
No.
I'm literally saying, this is my experience. It's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek take on it. Really what I'm telling you is about, don't have a good relationship with my mum, and my mum is also not on board with a lot of the stuff that my kids are kind of like, I feel is important to their identity. And what I'm doing is just telling you about me. And if you've already decided that me telling you about me is something that you hate, I don't know if I want you to like me anyway.
Yeah.
Genuinely, I don't think many people do really hate somebody coming on saying, oh, one of my children's non-binary. It's nothing that I've done.
Yeah.
It's just a reality.
Yeah.
Right? It's not. I think that most people, despite what, I think a lot of people are very loud and vocal with their hate, but most people either don't know anything about that side of life, or they are okay with it, or actually you shouldn't underestimate some audiences, because I think you'll find that when you ask most people, somebody they know is trans or non-binary, or bisexual or gay, or a combination of those things, because they're not the same, and somebody they know, somebody in their family. And so I really honestly think that if they really hate that, they're probably just going to hate me anyway, just because I'm a female comedian and I am therefore not funny.
Right.
So if you're in an audience where you get on stage and they go, women aren't funny, impress me, you might be able to win them round, and I hope I do. But if those same people are just going to go, But honestly, it's never really, I have to say, it's never really happened to me.
Yeah.
You know, that people have been not like what I've got to say.
No.
So it's like, I don't, and maybe I wouldn't, I don't know, maybe they wouldn't vote for me in a competition.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they're like, I thought the guy that talked about wanking off his dog was much funnier. You know, then obviously they're going to vote for that guy and they're not going to vote for me.
Yeah.
Right. And that's their choice. But our competitions, what do you want out of this? You know, competitions are great because, I mean, I've got a lot to say about this as well. Competitions are great because they say, look, this is proof that I can make people laugh.
Yeah.
That they can like me. Are competitions really what comedy is all about? Or is it just saying you're really good for 5 minutes? You know,
Yeah.
It's like, who of your favourite comedians would go in and absolutely smash a competition? Not all of them.
No.
Right. And you think, yeah, but you have to, they're kind of like a necessary thing so that you can say, prove yourself. But what happens a lot with Catsup, so just to go back to Catsup for a minute, is that people send us videos and we watch them, but we often put people on who we've already seen. Because it's difficult to tell from a video, but you know, but often if we haven't been able to get to see them, we look at their video and we go, oh, great, that's a great 5 minutes. Because you've come all the way out to, you know, to Chesham, we'll give you 7 because we want to kind of reward you that extra effort of coming out. And because actually, Kath and I both believe that 5 minutes is a little bit too short for people to really get
I agree.
settled in with the audience. It's a necessary thing because if you want to keep your nights kind of snappy, or you've got to fit a lot of acts in and for competitions. But really, a little bit more time, I think, is better. What happens sometimes is that people come out and they do their 5 minutes and they literally can't do more. They can't do their next 2 minutes. They don't know what to do with their next 2 minutes because there's not enough opportunity in London on the open mic scene to do more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You can do a gig every night in London to a small audience of other comedians sometimes. Not always, sometimes proper audience. You can do that 5 minutes over and over again every day, and you've never done more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and you can do different 5 minutes. How do you put it together? And you could be absolutely smashing the competitions doing that. Absolutely smashing the competitions. Also, 5 minutes of one-liners, hilarious. 20 minutes of one-liners, you need more. You need to have some kind of character or some kind of act out or something, you know, something more than just doing one-liners for 20 minutes. I mean, when I say that, there'll be an example of an amazing professional comedian that does it for 20 minutes. But I know that when I've seen them, they've had some kind of clowning extra.
They're not just random one-liners for that. They are built into a story or something. So it might literally be one-liner jokes, but each one-liner joke leads to another, it leads to another, it leads to a story at the end. And you kind of think, that's...
got it.
Yeah.
Or they've done something like they've made like a little short film in between. Or they've got some kind of bit where, was it Tim Vine? I can't remember who it was, but one comedian I saw came on, I mean, absolute genius. And it was all in the way that he came on and he looked at the audience and, you know, it was just classic. He was wearing a tracksuit, like... as if, because he was kind of making out, he was just like, you know, I'm just working up these jokes and whatever, training for my show. And he came on and he unzipped his tracksuit and underneath he had like a shirt and tie on. And it was so funny, but it was the way he did it. And that's before he hadn't done any one-liners then. Yeah. So it's like, if you've got 20 minutes, that's what you're going. To me, what I love is my ambition really is to do an hour show, Edinburgh or anywhere else, and that's what I want to do. How valuable is doing loads and loads of 5 minutes? Well, it is valuable because you've got to get good at comedy, but you know, how good is smashing 5 minutes going to be in the future? It's a really difficult question, and I think exactly if you go in and the audience, whether the audience like you or not, are they laughing at all your jokes? I mean, everybody's done like a gong show, for example, is like the extreme example of that, right? Yeah. Where you get on, whether they like me or not, it all depends on this 1 minute, and these 3 random people, you know, and that it just depends on what they're feeling at the time, what the MC has said to them, whether they've said you've got to get stricter, or you know, which order you come on in, whether you know is a gong show a good test of a great comedian? Yes, it's a great test of type of comedian.
Resilience.
Yeah, but it's a test of a type of comedy.
Yeah.
Like, is it a test of all comedy?
No.
James Acaster is one of my favourite comedians. His joke about the British Museum is one of the funniest sequences that I've ever seen. We haven't stopped. You can't have it back. We're still looking at it.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. It's possible that James Acaster would come on a gong show and smash it. It's possible that he wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's really possible that he wouldn't. And yet he is incredible. So
yeah, competitions are a strange one. I might have this wrong, but I think isn't So You Think You're Funny a 7-minute competition? So
yeah, that's 7.
That's classed as kind of like the benchmark for progression, isn't it? If you really want to make it, then you can do it through So You Think You're Funny, which does make me wonder why a lot of all the other competitions are 5.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think the inherent nature of 5-minute sets as competitions with bringers just is, I don't know, they annoy me. I don't mind being judged by 3 people who have no bias to anything that's going on in the room. They're judging. Okay, comedy is so subjective, but those 3 people as judges would be judging you against 10 other people, not somebody's friend. Do you know what I mean? Because you immediately go, well, I don't know how all the competitions do it, but I know like G&B, when they do their new act competition, it's 2 votes because they know full well that somebody's going to be voting for their friend.
Yeah.
But I've been to competitions where I've seen somebody sail through and you kind of go, well, they did bring 10 people.
Yeah.
West
End Act of the Year, West End New Act of the Year, they have a limit on how many people you can bring with you, and everybody gets the acts don't vote, but everybody gets 2 votes. So it's your vote, and you vote for the person that you came with and somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, whether people stick to that, I don't know, because how would you? There's always rumours, that people bring more people and they just say, pretend you don't know me. I mean, but I don't know how you would even combat that.
No.
It's really, competition's just so wildly subjective. And then again, sometimes somebody will come and bring one person and just be so amazing that they'll smash the whole thing.
You do
like,
get those. But the thing I like about the new act one, the only time I was actually due to enter that was I ended up getting COVID, so I couldn't do it. Was that he offers wildcards, and that's clearly something that's been thought about. That it's not just about.
Yeah.
So, you see somebody that's done really well. He can assess the room in how the voting's gone, and somebody maybe has done better and hasn't gone through.
Sometimes, from a personal perspective, I sometimes will see people and just think, wow, that's brilliant, really funny, really clever, absolutely loved it. And the audience is enjoying it as well, but they don't get through. And I feel really frustrated. I feel really like that just seems so unfair, even though it must be fair. How can it be fair when that's so clever and brilliant? Yeah, it's. I never mind losing to people who are amazing. I have a problem where sometimes comedians will say to me, I really like your set. And I'll be like, well, I'll tell the audience. Because sometimes sometimes the comedians like it more than they do.
Yeah.
And what is the answer to that? How do but I do genuinely think that's because comedians look at you and think, listen to your set and think, that's got legs. You could make that longer. You could make that into a 20-minute, clever and funny set, which I think is what we're all going for. I'm not saying that I'm clever and funny, although obviously I am.
Of course.
But that's what we're all going for. And I think sometimes other comedians can spot that in other comedians.
Yeah.
Like, this person's doing 5 minutes. It's really clever and funny, and they've got a great persona. And for some reason, they haven't won this competition. But I want to hear this person do more. I want to hear their next 5 minutes. I want to hear 20 minutes. And this is what we look at in Catsuit when we look at those videos. If you send a video into Catsuit and you're reading off your hand and you're looking out of your book, like, we don't usually carry on watching, which is really harsh, but we get a lot of videos.
That's understandable, though. I think.
I just think you've chosen to send that video in.
Yeah.
It's not the fact that you're doing it. I don't really object to that, actually, because like if it's something new, maybe you need your book out. Or pros do that all the time if they're doing something new. Fine. What it says to me is that you haven't respected the night enough. You haven't thought enough of the night to send us a good video yourself, and which also sounds really up ourselves, but it's not that. It's because we want people to try their best. We want people to turn up and go, this is a great night. I'm going to really try and do my best here.
There's two types of nights on the open mic circuit. I think there's one type which is it's a comedy show, and there's one which is it's a practice arena in effect.
Yeah.
And the practice arena ones are the ones where they generally won't ask for a video. And those are the ones where if you were to send a video, you send that video. But when you know that somebody's putting on a show and they're putting out posters every week or every month, they're putting the effort to put people on those kind of things.
Yeah.
They're trying to sell you as an act to their audience to want to come and donate, pay, whatever it is. And if you can't send a video without you, I don't want to say cheating, but the first thing you do is if you look at notes is you've broken eye contact with the audience. And once you've broken eye contact and that connection with an audience, do you as a promoter want that person on your stage doing that and then going, and this next bit is, and this next bit is?
I think from our perspective, it's because our night it's loosely a new act, new material night.
Yeah.
But what we mean is new act, your best, please.
Yeah.
New pros, okay, you can chuck a bit of new material in because we're not paying you very much. We do pay very small amount to openers and closers, and they are semi-pro or pro. And we only have the middle bit is open mic.
Yeah.
We want people to come and do their best stuff. If you chuck in a new joke, we won't know unless it's really offensive and we might go, what? That wasn't in the video. But, we won't know. Do what you like, really. But, you've got your foot in the door. It's your choice when you turn up what you do. But the point is, it's an audience of at least 40 people most months, going up to 50 if we're sold out. And they're there to have a great time. If you're looking at your hand, are you really making the most of that audience? Video. If you want a good video yourself at our night, killing it with an audience of 50 people.
Yeah.
And it's the same with One Night Only in Hitchin.
Yeah.
Good audience, video yourself smashing it there.
Yeah.
It's things like that. You're like, there are lots of nights that you can go on and do new material. And if you really have to do new material at our night, that's your choice. But think about, what you're saying when you apply. You're saying, do we respect them? Like Kath and I work really hard. Sometimes people say to me, how do you get that audience in? Well, some of it is because we know people in Cheshire. We live in Cheshire.
Yeah.
Some of it is because of that. But they wouldn't, they would only come once if they didn't like it, basically. But it's also, we do a lot of promoting. We hand out flyers, we post on social media. I'm already thinking, have I posted? I haven't posted for ages on social media. I have to do that again. I'm like, on the back of my mind. Yeah. We post, we do posters. We put posters up and we share it online. We say, right, we're going to share, if you're on our night, you'll be on our poster. And then we'll share that, and and hopefully you'll share it. And this is like it's at a pub, so we put it on the pub Facebook page. I'm giving away all my secrets. Mark, cut this out. Don't tell anyone. I'm serious. But yeah.
The biggest hint that anybody could have is that it's a once a month gig.
Yeah.
It's a special thing.
It's not a weekly.
It's not a weekly.
Up.
It's not twice weekly.
Yeah.
When you get beyond probably up to like a fortnight is kind of that could almost be considered a practice arena. But when it's a once a month, you've been picked. We've got 5 spots. You've been picked. 5 people have been picked out of potentially 50 that have applied for that 1 month.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
like this is it, right? We've spoken about this before, and I have to tell everybody this because it's absolutely true. We try really, really hard. I think there's always a balance between, shall we give the audience what they want or shall we tell them what they want? And from my perspective, we do a little bit of both because we try to get a really big variety of acts on. We want something for everyone. And if you're going to come to our night, there may be an act on that you don't quite get because we want somebody a bit different on. We like to do a variety. We are a female-run night.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why we want to set up our night is that we're fed up of going to very heavily male-orientated nights.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of them. So we're like, right, well, for our night, we don't want to be like, oh, it's okay because we're women and therefore we don't have to put any other women on. That makes no sense to us. So we try very hard to get a balanced bill. So we try to do 50-50 women and we don't count ourselves as women. We are women.
Honest.
Promise, So we don't count ourselves. So what that means is it is heavily kind of
to the outside world, it looks like it's more females than males.
Right. And obviously there's no need in this day and age for it to be all white people.
Yeah.
That is just not a thing.
Yeah.
So we want it just to be really, really diverse. And because of that, we can't always get everybody on that we want to every month.
Yeah.
But if we choose you, it's because we really want you on. So if you can't make it for whatever reason, it's never a problem. There's always somebody else to come that we can slot in instead.
Yeah.
But obviously, let us know straight away because we're very careful about our night. We carefully construct it. We don't just say, put this person on here. We go, right, music act. Well, we don't want anybody to follow a music act, so we'll put them. So if they're the open mic, we'll put them the last in the middle half.
Yeah.
If we don't want to, if we have another musical act, we have 2 musical acts on, we think about where that other musical act's going to go. We want this person's doing 10, so, we want them there. This person, we don't want this person to come on after somebody really alternative and then, really wacky when they've got a very deadpan style. That might work really well, or will it? If we do that, then we might do a bit of emceeing in between. We really carefully plan.
Oh, I appreciate that completely.
And if people aren't thinking, if people then send us a video reading from their books, do you know what I'm saying?
You're not prepared for what we've done for this.
We care.
Yeah.
We just want you to care.
Yeah.
That's it really. And it is hard to get people on, Mark.
I love hearing about how much detail some people go into when they put nights on. Because I think it makes a world of difference. And you start thinking about
how it fits together.
And how much time people get and how much you think they're going to need to realistically put on a good show. And it all comes down to planning the sound. We have a sound guy, we have the spotlights, we have the chairs.
We are just so grateful for our sound guy. He's so important. We spend our whole time saying, thank you very much, Matt. And buying him presents.
Yeah.
Because it's so important. And he does the lighting as well.
Yeah.
And we are just he was sick at the last one that we did, and he missed George Michael, which is sad for him.
More than once.
It's terrible. But he gave us all these instructions from his sick bed, which was absolutely beautiful of him to do, and we were just thank you Matt, and so we tried, and then last minute we got another friend, so I think it was actually Kath's, so Mike is Kath's son's guitar teacher kind of person, and so because he knew a bit about sound, we were like, oh please. So at the last minute he kind of came and saved our skin. And we were just thank you. Honestly, it's so much, goes into having a good night. Sound is incredibly important. If nobody can hear you tell your joke, nobody's going to laugh. And it's massive. I mean, the thing is that you end up kind of paying people, or at least donating money to them or gifts to them, because really they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart, because it's a job and they're doing it for you. And it's so vital. And then that's another thing that you're having to maintain as part of the night. There's only so much you can do in terms of bottles of wine.
Yeah, I mean,
you have to start saying to people, this is a regular thing, thank you very much, I'm going to start paying you.
I mean, we were quite lucky in that the sound guy is actually related, in that he's basically my son-in-law, and he owns
better.
Him and his dad own a company, like sound engineer. So
yeah,
all the equipment was all his.
Amazing.
And you're just like, I said to him at the end of the very first one we ever did, which I think you were at, I think you watched.
Yes. I was in the
I said to him, how much would it cost for us to hire you to do this? He said £550.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
And Matt, our sound guy, it's something that he does for a living.
Yeah.
And you just like, so it really takes like a community of people to set up a comedy night. Nobody's getting rich.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we just do it because we love it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why we're a little bit precious. That's why we're a bit precious about the videos, you know.
Yeah.
It'll be like, send in a video of you without notes. We're human. We want people to love our night as much as we do.
Yeah, you want to put on the best night you can possibly put on. And if that means you want to put on the best acts you can possibly put on. So you've got to have faith in that the acts you're going to book are the acts that are going to match your night.
Yeah. And we love our acts. We really love them. Like sometimes we're running around a bit and we kind of don't go around to doing this, but we try and buy them a drink. We say, chill out, you know, take a seat, do this. Like we try really hard to be the kind of night that people enjoy performing at. Sometimes I do nights and most of the women that I meet at comedy nights are friendly and wonderful and lovely. And I'd say quite a large section of men are lovely as well and are really helpful and nice and respectful and not creepy. But there's always like, every now and again, there'll be like a group of lads who just don't want to engage with you at all or even look at you. And there's something to do with me being a mum, I think, that does that. I think if you walk into a room with a group of lads in it and you're the mum, you know, I think they're a little bit close to going, oh, mum's here.
Yeah.
You know, and I just think that there's no interest from them in wanting to be friends with me. They don't see any point, I don't think.
Okay.
And I find that fascinating because everybody else in comedy is great.
Yeah.
I just think it's fascinating. I'm like, wow, everywhere you go, people are like, oh, yeah. Oh, nice to meet you. Whether they're pros or not. Pros, in fact, often will be so kind and friendly because they don't know that I run a night.
Yeah.
But I could do, and I do.
Yeah.
So, you know, why would you be mean to somebody? But not just that, right? You want everybody to kind of get on because you never know who you're going to meet in the future.
Yeah.
But I find it really surprising when you've got really edgy comedians that just don't want to. I'm not talking about nervous before they go on. That's different. Nervous before you go on is a whole. Sometimes people don't want to talk. That's fine. In fact, I'm terrible at talking to people and going, sorry. So I'm a bit of a. I don't know if you've noticed, Mark. Have you noticed, Mark? I talk quite a lot.
Occasionally. But no, one of the best pieces. I asked somebody that is actually kind of going up the ranks now in comedy, and I said to him, "What's the one piece of advice from the time you've been doing this? What would you say?" And he just said, "Be nice to everyone."
Yeah, why wouldn't you be?
Don't know what will happen in the future. That person could, like you say, run a night. That person could run a TV production company. You don't know what half these people do. And that's the really interesting thing from doing this is that I can Google every guest that comes on. You might find a video on YouTube or something else like that. Yeah. But then sometimes when you find like, oh yeah, that person was in a Hollywood blockbuster series. Like, okay, that wasn't expected. One guy who was on recently was in one of my most favourite TV programmes.
Yeah. Funny when you see people pop up and you go, oh yeah, that's...
Like, there's this, what you see on a night out, an open mic night, and spend 5 minutes talking to somebody, there's so much more that goes on, that's behind. And some of it is just insane. Absolutely insane.
A course that I was on recently, there was a girl on the course, a woman on the course, I should say. I say girl because to me, everybody looks young. Do you get that, Mark? Everybody looks so young to me. And I keep thinking, I shouldn't say girl, woman. There was a woman on course. She'd had an incredible background, working for Saturday Night Live and things like that. And it was absolutely, I didn't get to speak to her very much because she had to kind of leave and she had some kind of a work thing that she had to get to. But I just thought, wow, the incredible thing about comedy is the people that you meet, the people that you talk to really have just done astounding things. Like, that
Howard Reed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mabel. I mean, of course, Mabel's incredible.
Yeah.
In her own right.
Why wouldn't she be?
And why wouldn't she be?
Yeah.
It just, these wonderful things that I did an online, sometimes we do courses as well. you meet the tutors that do the courses. You're like, this is wonderful. Like I did a sketch writing course with Gemma Arrowsmith, and she with the Tracy Ullman show. She, the other day I saw her in. She had a part in Stathlet's Flats.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh, it's Gemma. And I thought just little things like that makes you feel like it's just wonderful just to meet people who've just got this incredibly
You've just reminded me, like when I
varied kind of like career.
When I was doing my course, I'm sat there at home on a weekend watching telly, and all of a sudden, I think it was Waitrose. And Waitrose advert comes up, and I'm looking at the telly and going, I know that guy. Where do I know that guy from? And I've literally paused the telly, and I've looked. He's on my fucking course. And I'm just like, I walked in on the Thursday. I was like, you were on my telly the other day. He went, oh, was it the Waitrose advert again? I'm just like, I've come from a world which is a non-creative world. So I work in corporate, all of that. And then I come into this and I see all of this. It doesn't cross my mind that there are people that are learning stand-up that have come from a creative world as well, that we've seen them on. I was talking to the person that was actually my tutor, and he said to me at one point, he said, oh, we had a couple of courses after you. He said, we had somebody who came in who was quite famous, but they only turned up for week one because they saw themselves as too much of a distraction. And I was just like, well, who was it? It was Isla Fisher.
No way. Yeah. No way.
Isla Fisher turned up to do a City Academy.
What?
Stand-up.
That's bad.
Beginner stand-up course.
No way.
Yeah. I was just like, are you winding? No. He said, I'm 100%. So, that's ridiculous.
No. Well, I mean, they are human. This is it. Yeah. When I lived, not where I live now, but my last place that I lived, we lived next door to the guy. His name's Rob. Do you remember Jason from Gavin and Stacey, the brother? So Gavin and Stacey, their brother, so Bryn and Jason go on the fishing trip.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So Rob, we lived next door to him. So that was fun. And his wife was in Green Wing. So that was incredible for me. I was like, wow. But then Chesham's a bit of a funny place like that. Alex Horn lives in Chesham. We see him all the time. Like to the point where, he literally lives like in my street. It's just up the road. And so we're so used to seeing him that, they stop being famous to you after a while. Yeah. And you just get used to it. And so it's not a big deal. We do joke about him at Catsuit quite a lot.
You've got to try and get him on.
I mean,
you've got to ask.
It could happen. We do, we do know, we have our sources, Mark. I think it could happen one day.
Okay.
Maybe it will. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. Be nice to people because you just don't know what. I mean, that shouldn't have to be said anyway.
No, exactly. To be absolutely fair to those, let's just call them edgelords. To be perfectly fair to them, what they do is they come on and they tell a joke about violence against women, and then they get away with it by framing it as like, oh, the woman was asking me to be violent to them. Oh, you're not supposed to do that anymore. Kind of, Yeah. Oh, but I see the audience don't see what you're doing there, but I do. You want to tell a joke about violence towards women, but you want to frame it in a way that is acceptable. So you've changed it around. But to me, it's like, I'm not finding it funny. Yeah. If it was funny, maybe I'd be like, oh, you got me. Unlikely. But, I would still laugh. I'd just be like, oh, wow, you've really got away with that one. Anyway, what's happened there is that they've done something like that and they've like, there's no need for them to be friends with me in their minds, even though I'm like, great, I'd like to get to know you. I'd like to know I'd like to follow your career. I'd like to know if you've got something else other than that, because maybe you've got another 5 minutes that's great, and we'd love to have you on at Catsuit. But that particular bit, just not. I mean, it's not just that I don't like it; it's that our audience won't like it. Yeah. This is it. So I'm like, well, it's not the kind of night that I want to create. And it's also, if the audience like what we do, then they won't like what you're doing. So I'm like, but, I'd like to be friends with you anyway, because maybe I'm misjudging you and you've got, like I said, you've got another 5 minutes, which is absolute gold, and maybe I'm too sensitive, and maybe this is what audience want to hear about. And that should be okay to say, I met her on a dating app and she asked me. So there you go, I'm too sensitive. So I'm like, you should really try and be friends with me anyway. But they don't see the need to be friends with me because they're like, what has she got to offer?
Yeah.
Nothing. She's not going to be, if I tell her one of my jokes, she's not going to like it. She's not going to give me the feedback that I need. She's going to say I don't like it. Whereas like a lot, so and they're right in a way, because if I tell a joke and an audience really hates it, I've got to think to myself, would I ask these people for feedback? Are they the kind of audience that, it's the same with other comedians. If I meet a comedian whose humour is something that I don't appreciate, which there always will be, would I ask them for feedback about my jokes? Not really, because they're not going to like my stuff.
Yeah.
So unless I want to make my stuff more like their stuff, then I might ask them. And if for balance, it might be an interesting experiment.
Yeah.
But do I need to? No. Do they need? Do you know what I mean? There's not. So I'm thinking, are they ignoring me because really they genuinely haven't got anything to offer me and I haven't got anything to offer them? Or should we all just be nice to each other? I mean, the answer is we should all just be nice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Oh, that makes me sound, I think, really anti-young, edgy comics. And I promise you that I'm not.
No.
I really promise. Though it is true that we are slightly, I wouldn't say gentler, because, Hannah. So she came on and did she's got a great joke about salmon, which I won't reveal now in case she's keeping it secret. And of course they loved it. Like, why would they? There's nothing like non-raucous about our audience. They love a dirty joke. They love a bit of a edgy joke. Chris came on and said something, I won't repeat it, but it was edgy and hilarious. Let's just put it that way. Absolutely wonderful. So we're not trying to kind of, I don't know. And we're not the woke police, is what I'm saying.
No.
But there are some things that I will not laugh at, and I will never laugh at, and I will always go, nope.
Yeah.
If you joke about it in front of me, and it's because it's punching down. And different people have different opinions about punching up and down, right? I'm not very tolerant about punching down. I'm just like, no.
I agree. For me, it's not, doesn't feel big or it doesn't feel clever.
No.
It always kind of reminds me a bit of which section of people you fitted into at school. If you were the bullied or whatever, and if you were the bullied, you were the one that felt like you were the victim of everything.
Yeah.
And if you were that person and you felt like that, why would you want to make somebody else feel like that if you then got the power on stage?
Yeah. I don't know about you, Mark, but I love a nerd. I really love a nerd.
I was the nerd.
You're the nerd. I love a nerd. My husband's a nerd, 100%. I love Star Wars, and I really love like Japanese cartoons. I've got a tattoo of Totoro on my ankle, and sci-fi. I'm really massively into sci-fi. I mean, I was ridiculously excited about Black Mirror and new series coming out. Crazy. Growing up, I loved Star Trek as well, which is, the ultimate. I love nerdy stuff, and I love nerdy people, and I just cannot stand this kind of like nastiness.
Yeah.
And so many people in that group are also part of, the queer community, or they may be autistic, or, you just, anything that to me is just stop punching down. It's just, I can't help. And also I'm a bit of a mama bear. I've got this, it's no accident I've got this talking at my set about my mother and that I'm a mother and that talking about my kids, because, you get that kind of like, what, don't you dare, and so just the way it is.
Yeah. So kind of back to the topic of comedy.
Sorry, cut that all out. It's too emotional. God.
You mentioned you are working on a show now with Kath. So what's the details on all of that?
We're doing a show at the Cheshire Fringe Festival. There was like a competition where we had to come and do like 10 minutes. We smashed it. Ninia Benjamin was there. Ninia Benjamin was one of the judges. And afterwards she was so nice to us afterwards. She was just like, oh, it's brilliant, and like gave us hugs, and we thought, I think we've got this. Yeah. Mark Ran, who runs it, was kind enough to say, yeah, we'd love to give you a slot. So we usually, with Catsuit, we do sections. So we MC, Cat Soup. So we do sections. And this is an hour of just us. We may have a special guest or two. That's a bit of a wink. There may be some dressing up. But really it's just me and Kath. And we're taking the best bits of our Cat Soup performances and putting it all together. It's quite an interactive we do quizzes, and no, we don't make the audience do stuff. There's no humiliation of the audience involved. We don't make them do stuff, but we do include them and involve them, even if it's just, getting them to answer quiz questions as a team, it's just going to be so much fun. It's really silly. And people are very complimentary about what we do in Cat Soup. Often they say to us at the end of the night that they liked our bits the best. And that is very encouraging. And so we're like, great, well, come and see us do an hour at Cheshire Fringe on the 25th of May. Tickets available now via the Cheshire Fringe Facebook. It's at 9:45. So it's a little bit after the other acts that are on during the day. So it's a little bit late is what I mean. But it's silly and fun. And so it's actually the perfect spot. Go and see your favourite comedians, have a few drinks, come upstairs in the George, that's at the George and Dragon.
Right.
Come upstairs and join us because it's going to be great fun. I've already had a lot of people saying, oh, I can't wait. It's going to be great. And it is going to be silly. And there's definitely going to be talk of, the 90s and possibly the 80s because that's what we talk about a lot. So... and music and Kath used to be a teacher. I used to be an English teacher, and she cannot resist this teacher persona because she's dealing with a crowd, class. So we have an interesting dynamic, she and I, where she's the teacher and I'm not naughty at school. I know you will find this hard to believe, Mark. I'm not well behaved. And so she is the master of ceremonies, really, in that she says, right, this is what we're going to do, and she has quite a dry kind of humor about it, and tells people off. She does get very annoyed with me and with sometimes with the audience, especially if I encourage the audience to be badly behaved. She gets she's like, Sophie, she sent me to the corner once. She genuinely did. Yeah, she's great. She also does stand up as well. Yeah. It's got a different kind of we're all different, aren't we? But different tone to me. But I'd like to see her do more stand up actually.
So a little fun question I'd like to ask is if you are to get a TV special or you do an hour and stuff like that, which you've kind of got coming up, what walk-on music would you pick to come on to?
In the past, I've had Too Much Too Young by the Specials.
Okay.
Because I love it anyway, and I love 80s music, and I feel like that kind of sums me up.
What about if you got anything planned for your show with Kath?
What do you mean for walk-on music? We walk on to Love Cats.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because of Cat Soup, and Kath always does a little dance. I get halfway to the stage and I think, are we dancing? But it kind of works with the persona.
As we're winding down, I like to kind of finish off the conversation with setting the comedians a challenge to do. Hopefully you've listened to a couple so you know what's coming up.
Yes, I do.
Good. For those of you that don't, and first-time listeners and watchers, I like to set comedians to tell a joke from this joke book called The Little Book of Shit Jokes by Sid Finch. The idea is the comedian gets to pick a joke from this book, tell it live on stage, incorporate it into their set however they want, post it on Instagram, tag us in it, have a laugh. The title of the book is very apt.
Okay.
And the comedians only get to pick the joke by page number.
Right.
So what you're going to get, I've got no idea.
Can I ask you a question? How did you select that book? Did you just see it in a bookshop and go, that's it? Or what happened?
My wife bought this for me as a birthday present.
Right.
And then the actual idea of using this joke book came from For One Night Only, because my first ever set in December, December 23 was my first ever 10-minute set that Dean ever gave me.
Right.
And I went into that going, I don't know if I've got 10 minutes of material.
Right.
So my idea was to finish on, if I run out of material, it would be like, right, you're going to finish my set for me. Give me a number between 5 and 95.
Ah,
If the joke's shit, you've ruined the set. It's not my fault.
nice. That's a nice bit of audience interaction there as well.
So I did
The
that.
audience like to feel that they're involved.
Yeah. So I got to the end of my set and I thought, fuck it, I'm going to do this anyway. And
Genius.
Genius
cop out.
But before I told the joke, I think I challenged Dean, because they're obviously on his kind of style of joke.
Yeah.
That he would have to tell it another joke in the future.
And that's how it all started.
Yeah.
So when she gave you the book, did you read them? Did you read them?
I read a few of them, yeah.
But did you like flick through, or did you start at the beginning and work all the way through?
I flicked. I went through it one by one, kind of when I went, that's bad. Yeah, that's
because I was gonna choose like just the first page. Like, what's the first joke on the first page?
The very first joke. If you want the first one, I believe that's
love
actually the first joke has gone.
Okay.
On the first page, but the second joke on the first page is available.
Oh, what about the last joke in the book?
Oh, I'm pretty sure that's gone.
What?
Yeah, that went to Deepak Patel.
Ah.
And the first joke went to Joe DaCosta.
Joe DaCosta. It was, that's because me and Joe DaCosta, same wavelength. Oh gosh, now I've got to decide now. Do I go for second? Because second is like loser. And last is like headliner. Oh gosh. How about I do some kind of weird my birthday or something like that?
Go pick whichever one you want.
Pin number. No. Okay, we'll go with 15, page 15.
15. Oh, it's a long joke.
Oh God, really? Lucky me. Lucky.
You can't. You don't. Yeah. The idea behind this is that you can adjust it however you want, but obviously
put your own spin.
Premise has to stay kind of stay the same.
Yeah.
Right. A policeman stopped a woman driving a car full of monkeys. What on earth are you doing? He said. Here's £100. Take them straight to the zoo. Later that evening, as the policeman was clocking off, he stopped the same woman with the same monkeys in her car. Hey, I gave you £100 to take these monkeys to the zoo, he said. I know, replied the woman, but we had some money left over.
Yeah.
So
we know this joke. I mean, I know this joke.
I didn't.
Yeah.
So I took them for ice cream after.
Yeah. That's it's a classic. It's usually, do you know how I know it? Because my family is Irish, and it's usually an Irishman is in the car and it says, and I said to Paddy, take these back to the zoo. But it's nonetheless a much better thing to make a woman look stupid. So the Irish are safe, but not the ladies. I'll give it a go. Why not? Do you know what? It would be so easy to work that into cat soup.
Yeah.
I felt like it was almost cheating to put it in cat soup, because sometimes at cat soup, I deliberately tell them bad jokes of my own. I deliberately make up bad jokes.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to tell you my bad jokes so that the first act looks amazing. And I make up these crap puns. But yeah, so no, I love it.
I honestly didn't see where that was going. But when you started laughing, I thought this is going to be great.
Yeah, no, I already anticipating the end. No, that's a classic. I kind of ruined it. Should we do it again? I'll pretend I don't. Do it again, and I'll be like, oh.
No, authenticity. But I guess lastly, how can people find you on social media?
I'm Sophie Sconcia Comedy on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's pronounced Sconcia, my last name, but I also Sconcia because it's Sconcia.
Yeah.
Because the C and the I in Italian is a ch sound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like ch, like the noise my mother-in-law makes when she sees me. So Sophie Sconcia Comedy on Instagram. That's my comedy Instagram. But if people would like to follow Cat Soup, that would be amazing. That is Comedy Cat Soup.
Comedy Cat Soup.
It was Cat Soup Comedy, but we had to change it because we got reported for animal cruelty. That is not a joke. People thought we were making soup out of cats. That was an unexpected issue. But, you know, apparently if you say comedy cat soup, they don't think that.
Okay.
Yeah. We do say now, no cats were harmed in the making of this soup. We give out a can of cat soup to the best audience member, and we do say, no cats were harmed in the making of this soup. Yeah, so Instagram, comedy cat soup. And on Facebook, we just cat soup on Facebook.
I'll put the links in the description and the synopsis of this podcast so people can find it. And Brilliant. I'll put a link to your Chesham Fringe thing as well. Is there tickets available for that?
Tickets available?
You can find us on Instagram, Open Mic Comedy Pod. We have a website, openmiccomedypod.com. Whichever platform you're listening to us on, please give it a like, follow, subscribe, and all that jazz. It really does help us get up the charts and the ratings for more people to hear these lovely comedians I speak to. So lastly, I want to say thank you for your time today, Sophie.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to me rabbit on. Oh my God.
It's good fun.
Love it.
A bit of reminiscing about things from the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And for everybody else, I will speak to you all very, very soon. Goodbye.